My question is to Mrs. Hwang from Pfizer. Preliminary results on real-world data from Israel are very encouraging, and good results with a scenario about 80% of cases caused by the so-called UK strain of the virus. Of course, we need to wait for the detailed analysis of this data and the peer review report. This is just data that I got in the internet and reports. Anyway, I would like to ask if Mrs. Hwang, if you have already early evidence that you can share with us about the real world data and about other strains of the virus, the so-called South African, Brazil, and also different groups of population. How is the results, different ages, and also groups with chronic diseases? Thank you very much.
Israel are very, very encouraging, and they are very consistent with what we saw in our clinical trial. And this was a study that we were very much supportive of, because we knew that early on, having this real world evidence to demonstrate, to help us learn about the disease and the effectiveness of this vaccine was going to be very important. So more publications will be coming, but because you asked, I'll share with you some preliminary public data, and it's public, so it's something that's probably you may have seen, but for symptomatic control in this real world, in one HMO, we saw a 93.7% efficacy. For hospitalizations, a 93.3% efficacy, and for deaths, 93%. And again, this data is from one study. There are more studies continuing all the time, and that's why we are anxiously waiting to look at the full set of data to help understand what this is. And then just a quick nod to your comment about having digital systems. Yes, indeed, it is very helpful because it gives us the ability to real time track and understand who had received their vaccinations, and to be able to track their results and their symptoms and their outcomes. Back to the variants, because you asked it twice. Again, we are actively researching what it is that we need to do on the variants. In fact, today, Pfizer issued a press release to communicate the fact that we are initiating a booster study, and that we would be boosting those who have already received the first and second doses. They are now going to receive a third dose in some time frame, somewhere between 6 to 12 months, to see whether whether the immunity levels will be able to manage the effects of the new variants. But in addition to that, we are also working on understanding whether we may need a new vaccine altogether with a different genetic sequence. And so both of these approaches is what's going to allow us to deal with the new variants. And the good news, and what you should be very much assured of, is that it's because the mRNA technology is so flexible that with a change in genetic sequence, that's all we need to be able to create a new vaccine. And so we believe that it will take us about 100 days from the time that we start where we identify the code that we want to use to the time where we could have a viable vaccine. Again, we need to work with regulators to be able to understand, what kind of regulatory and approval pathway will be required. And I think it's also important to know that, again, because of the technology, what we need is the sequence, and the rest of the manufacturing process is identical. So we'll be able to manufacture this in very, very rapid order.